Don't say that.
Hello and welcome to Susegad Stories from Goa. I'm your host, Clyde D'Souza. I'm a 3-time published author, media professional, and a Goan who loves everything about Goa. My latest book is called Susegad, The Goan Art of Contentment. In my podcast, I chat with some famous and some of my favorite Goans, and together we explore Goa beyond its beaches. From Feni to Fado, Casa to Cashews, come discover Goa like you've never done before. Varun Hegde is the founder of Soul Traveling, a company that specializes in offbeat and experiential community tourism. From ferry crossings to mud baths, home-cooked food, and feni tasting, Varun and his team are single-handedly helping people fall in love with not just the Goa that we see in brochures or on beaches or on beach shacks, but with the lovely Goan lifestyle one can experience when one literally mingles with locals in Goa. So Varun, welcome to the Susegad Stories podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Clyde. It's a pleasure to be here, and congratulations on your book as well. It's lovely.
Great, Varun. So generally when I start the podcast, I always ask my guests, where in Goa are they talking to me from? Where's home for you in Goa? And describe your surroundings.
So currently I stay in a place called Madgaon or Margaon, which is more of a city in Goa, but it still has all the characteristics of Goa. You have the Susegad life, you have the neighbors coming in, talking in, mixing around. So that part of it is still there. And so that's where I'm right now in Margaon.
So, Varun, now my earliest memories of Goa, was being dragged to my ancestral village, which was, by the way, in Khandelwal. Every summer holidays, we'd go there. And this was like early 80s. So the only travel we had was, walking by on foot, getting into one of those jam-packed Kadamba tourist buses, right? And we'd go to relatives' places from one relative to the other, walking through fields, through taking a boat across the Shapora River, sometimes shortcuts through back roads filled with trees. But I didn't know that what I was doing was an aspect of experiential tourism, in that sense. But yeah, tell us a little bit of your story. What made you start Soul Traveling?
So Soul Traveling was quite a journey. I was born in Benaulim, then raised up, came to Margaon and did what most adults do after finishing their college is engineering. And then I went on to work for a few years. So I was in Bangalore and in Frankfurt for almost 4 years in IT. And that's when I kind of realized that travel is much more than just leisure or sightseeing that was very popular. And travel can bring much more to life than just, visiting a place when you have time to do it. And I also realized that Goa being such you would call it a well-marketed place, if in that sense, it's on the globe, people know Goa, but I still felt that there was so much more in Goa that could be, shown across and communicated to people. So that's when I came back and Soul Traveling happened.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I'm really glad you're doing it because again, all of us when we were growing up or even when we do these package tourism that we take or, that we get on to, it just takes you from one spot to the other. And before you know it, you're back and you've just taken photographs with some backdrop. That's all you do. So, I mean, it's exciting what you're doing. And a lot of people don't know this. And even when I was writing my book, Susegad, I myself stumbled on so many facts about Goa that it's such an ancient civilization. There are rock carvings by the Kushavati River, right, that go back some 10,000 years old. It has been, of course, home to dynasties like the Kadambas, the Mughals, and of course, the very famous tourist Vasco da Gama, right? Now, there's so many layers of Goa, right? So how do you kind of unravel these layers and different aspects of it to the various tourists that, come to you?
Okay, I still wouldn't consider myself as an expert in that domain. But what was easy or what was, easiest in this whole journey was getting out the stories and sharing them and creating, the content part of it. Because if you go to a village, if you talk to the people really want to talk about their villages. And then we started connecting with a lot of people who are from different fields, and they have this feeling of belonging to that place. They want to share the stories of their ancestors. And the whole thing here was building a curated trail or experience around it and then putting it out to the people. So for research, we went to different villages. We spoke to people who really, especially the old people from the village, they really love sharing their stories from their childhood, from what they have been doing, what has changed over a period of time. And then getting it verified was the process again. We also work on different concepts. So something like nature related experiences, something like the cultural one, something around food, something around the houses. And that is how then, it gets people excited to see what is there in Goa.
Yeah, I think two things that you said were very important. One is that, how much the local people love Goa. And the other thing that you mentioned was the villages of Goa. This whole village aspect of Goa is such a strong part of it. And now we are seeing a lot of people trying to experience that as well. So for you, as someone who does this now for a living, what is one village experience that you think just blew your mind away? And what's your favorite village in Goa?
That's a very tough question. There are so many of them. I'll go with Benaulim because that's where I was born. That's where I have kind of, wandered in the lanes and actually seen, things being done, like going to the beach and seeing the rapon being pulled in with all the fish, going to the fields and, getting, dipping in the water. So all those memories make Benaulim my favorite village. An experience that blew my mind away was we recently did this festival called Intrus. And now Intrus is celebrated at quite a few places as Carnival. But there's this village called Dongri where they celebrated it like Shigmo. And Shigmo is something very local Goan, which is more of a lot of local folklore, dancing and all those things come together. And this is celebrated by both the Catholics, the Hindus. They get together and do it. And if you look around, there are all these instances of communal harmony across the places. You have something called the Shiole Zagor that happens where the Catholic and Hindu communities come and perform it. There's a village called Surla where just next to the boarding point, the tar that you call, there is a mosque. And every Shigmo procession that is taken by the villagers, the Hindus, they go to a mosque and kind of take the blessings and then go further. There are nice songs around it. So these are the things that we have grown up with and we have experienced ourselves.
Yeah, no, the absolute great thing about Goa is that there's so many layers in terms of culture and habits and traditions. And there are Hindus, there are Goans, there are Catholics, and all of them kind of, live, like you mentioned, the Intrus festival is actually something that happens before Lent. And the Hindus who were at that time under Portuguese rule, they wanted to celebrate the Shigmo festival, right? But then they couldn't because, of course, the Portuguese wanted the Catholic traditions to be followed. So therefore, they came up with the Intrus, right? So, and therefore, a lot of Hindus as well as Catholics celebrate Intrus before what is happening now, right? Which is the carnival, which happens before Lent season, of course. Yeah, that's an amazing thing that you mentioned. And I hope that, people can take part in some of these things. So in terms of local food, for you, what is your favorite really, really that makes you, smack your lips and eat with your hands? What's that Goan local food for you?
I think for everyone, it's the fish curry rice, depending on what kind of fish it is, because people just think fish is one thing, but then every day you have a different kind of fish coming in and the way that is prepared. So we are setting up a new experience and we had this elaborate, more of a Goan Catholic meal. And the way the preparation were, it was brilliant. It was like all these authentic recipes that have been lost over a period of time that we are trying to get back.
Wow.
In that, there was a very, very interesting preparation of the bal chow that was made. And I really loved the way it was made. I think to go along with, you have your meal and freshly cooked bibinka, there's nothing like that, I would say. So that would be the priority, fish curry rice, and then the rest of the things coming in.
Yeah, food, is just the binding thing which brings us all together and suddenly enemies can become friends. So in terms of beaches, Goa has like beautiful long coastlines. So what's your favorite beach and what experiences do you like, when it comes to the beach?
I would still prefer the beaches in South Goa compared to, North, probably because they are a little, I would like to call them a little more peaceful in that sense. So I would say if you want me to pick one, probably I think the Patna beach is quite interesting, or Kola beach, or Kholan as we call it. That's also quite interesting on that coastline.
Yeah, I've heard about the Patna beach. It seems to be catching on with a lot of people. For now, for tourists, it's like a touristy thing to do. But for Goans, the sea, the rivers are just part of everyday life. Like for example,
Mm-hmm.
my granny, again, to go back to a childhood memory, in the summers, local Goans flock to the beaches, right? And the reason they do that is because they believe that it eases their aches and pains. I'm sure I think you also must have done it.
Absolutely.
Your grandparents did it, as kids.
Absolutely.
So for Goans, the sea is a completely different aspect only of life.
Yeah, and you just feel at home next to a sea. I mean, I would do that probably anywhere when I travel. When you are close to sea, you find of. I used to do that. I used to connect back home, and it would just feel nice
Correct.
that you're there.
The other thing that is happening, there are actually more tourists in Goa than there are locals. I mean, I was amazed to know that there are like 20 lakh people, locals in Goa approximately, and there are about 60 to 70 lakh tourists, right? Part of them are domestic, there are foreign, there are Britishers who come with chartered planes, there are Israelis who make Arambol their home and Morjim their home, right? Russians who also make signboards now only in Russian. And in spite of all of that, Goans are known to be very hospitable, right? Now, I want to ask you, as someone who's been now doing this for some time, where do you think that hospitality of Goans comes from?
Okay, that's a very tricky question. Question I would say, where does it come from? From being brought up in an environment which is very unique, very different from the rest of, I would say India and rest of the world for that matter, because you have Goa. I mean, if you speak from a religious angle, it was ruled by all people from all religions.
Yes.
You had the Portuguese, before that you had the Adil Shah and the Bahamanis coming in. Before that you had the Kadambas and the Bojas coming in.
Mauryas, yeah.
So you had people being ruled, people from all religions ruling Goa, and that's why you would have different communities. So while growing up, you would have an exposure to all of these communities. Secondly, the Portuguese, when they came in and conquered Goa, I mean, it became like a gateway between Europe and Asia, because this was like one of their only bases in the country and in Asia for that matter. So whatever used to come from Europe used to be, Goa would be the first place to get exposed to that, and then the rest of Asia, I would say. So that you have that kind of exposure also coming in. You have concepts of families, friends, that has always been there from the childhood. You have those festivities being celebrated. Your traditions, for that matter, are still strong. I mean, at some point we realized that, you need to live life the way you want. I mean, you cannot just be a Bombay or a Bangalore for that matter, like, which just goes on and keeps running. You need your afternoon nap. You need your siesta time. Not because you are lazy, because you work better probably in the rest of the time that you get. You are more productive. So maybe that's the secret. The afternoon nap is the secret to go on hospitality, because they are kind of, calm and peaceful after that. So maybe that's the one.
Siesta is the real secret. Yeah, but I'm glad you said all of those things, because there was so much over there that you said, and a lot of it made sense. Because of course there was 400 years of Portuguese, and then before that there was Adil Shah, and then there was so many Hindu dynasties that ruled, and then of course during the Portuguese phase, I think a lot of Goans also went to various other colonies, whether it was Mozambique or Macau. So I think this entire moving back and forth, seeing so many different kind of people coming there, has given Goa this very hospitable nature. But now the other thing that I want to ask you is, how do you think all of this is impacting the current local scene? And do you think it's for the better, for the worse? What's your broad take on, the entire dark side of tourism, maybe, or the entire this platform of drugs, booze, just promotion of party culture? What do you think? How do you think that's impacting locals, or are you seeing a mix of both types of people coming to Goa?
So for one thing we cannot deny is tourism is the major source of income or livelihood to Goans. However, what has happened with Goa, I feel, is we have not really been able to brand Goa as something very unique or different. We kind of went with the flow. Like there were parties, there was alcohol cheaply available. We just went along with that, and that's how places like Baga, Kalangut started just crowding up, and that is not really tourism. I would say that is more of destruction. You have mass scale tourism, and something which kind of is not a long term thing. It will work for you in the short term, but long term you need to work towards something more sustainable, something more intimate, and something which the locals will also get involved in more. So I would say it's okay. It's good in a way, because it provides people with livelihoods, but it needs to be done right a little better. It cannot be just left on its own. Otherwise, we will just destroy what is remaining of Goa. So somewhere you need to have more holistic approach to tourism. You need to involve the locals, because there are times and there are instances where the locals in a village would say, okay, we are not getting anything out of it. Why do we need tourists? So that needs to be addressed in a very good way. And that is how tourism will develop in the long run, is what I feel.
So, I'm glad that you mentioned everything that you did. But on the positive front, I think it's people like you who are really changing and bringing this wave of what you're calling community tourism and involving the locals. So remember, I mentioned at in the beginning of the podcast that when I go to my grandmother's place in Kamuli, okay, they live on this nice small house which is on top of a hill, and opposite that there is a shrub of like these trees and these karvanda trees, right? Which is the karvanda is the berry. I don't know if you've ever eaten it, right? But it grows in a very, very thorny bush, and all of us as cousins, we kind of just enter into that, and we make an afternoon out of it, right? It becomes our little adventure where we go in through that and get bitten by red ants and thorns poking us, but we kind of plug that. Yeah, absolutely, battle scars, and we plug those karvandas and we bring it, and then we have our drink and our food, and then at the end for our dessert, as champions who have just brought that down, we eat those karvandas. So that's our experiential thing, which I've been growing up doing that. So are you also now offering things like that, like maybe plucking cashews, maybe having a bath in the well at a well, because that's also something that a lot of Goans do. Not now too much, of course, because there's water inside the house, but now that becomes that's something to experience, So are you giving people also these kind of different experiences that you're thinking of? Anything that you can name?
Absolutely. So the whole thing of plucking flowers, plucking, something that grows locally, you call it foraging now. It's like a fancy term for the thing that we did all our childhood. But yes, so we have this kind of experiences already lined up, already there and happening, where you get involved. So for the tribal food trail experience in Kankan, you visit a house of a person from the tribal community, and you go along with them, you pick up something, you get back, and then you start cooking with that. We also do it in Asolna. So Asolna is in South Goa, very close to where the river meets the sea, in Betul. And what we do here is, along with the fishing community, we get in the river on a boat, and then you get down, and I don't know if you did it in your childhood, but you collect tisrio or clams.
Yes.
And there is a specific way to do it. So you get down and you, with your feet, you kind of have this dance, which is there. And then you kind of, can get this.
You wiggle your toes, and then you kind of feel.
Then you come back on the show, and they show you all the things that they do as fishing community. You see how the shucking of oyster that goes on. The crab catching with koblies, koble, and the others, the things like pager and all those things. And then you get back and you get involved in the cooking process, and then you enjoy them. You have your meal along with it. So
wow,
yes, so something like that, something along the lines of fishing. Or going into the mangroves with birding and stuff coming in, trying to pick up something local on the way, So all this experiences is something we already have out there for the people to experience.
Lovely.
And we hope to have more of this as well. And we are trying to connect with a lot of locals from different fields of life and walks of life, I would say, who are interested in, creating this kind of things for Goa and creating that sustainable kind of tourism, and at the same time making sure the whole model is sustainable, so that the locals are benefited, and more youngsters take this as a field of interest. They should look at offbeat and experience based travel as a way of making a living.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I hope that people do that. And I think once they listen to you and then they see what you're doing, I'm sure a lot of people will be inspired to do the same thing. The other thing that I want to ask you is, growing up, I mean, we had a lot of homes that were kind of just abandoned and everybody called them haunted houses, right? What had happened is obviously the Portuguese had left and most probably some of them just abandoned their homes. So what we thought were haunted houses were actually people who had just left their homes like that, right? So there were a lot of ghost stories, right, in Goa at that time growing up. So is that something that you're also going to offer? I mean, I don't know. I was just thinking, there's still maybe many homes which are just dilapidated. There would make some fascinating stories of some old timers who can, take us through some of these homes.
Sure. I mean, there are quite a few of them. I mean, you would see them in all the villages in Goa.
Yes,
And
yes.
more so, apart from the reasons, of course, after the Portuguese left, there are
Correct.
a couple of other reasons, because for Goans, it's very easy to have a Portuguese passport, and a lot of people travel to
Yes,
Europe and other places. And secondly, there are a lot of property dispute also in Goa. So
absolutely.
that is why you have, houses abandoned. So there have been a lot of requests for this kind of trail, something around haunted houses and all. For our trails, we point out to them, we tell the stories about them, but we try to keep it a little as real as possible, because like in a village like Kansaulim, you have the story
Three
of the
Kings,
three
yeah.
kings, right? But it's not necessary that the locals would really accept or enjoy that, for that matter, because in Kansaulim we found that the locals are really angry
Yes,
at a point
yes,
where people project it as a haunted
yes.
church. They ask the haunted church kahan hai, and they get very strange answers from the locals then. And it's true. I mean, you have weird stories which are not even there. I mean, they say that they call it Three Kings Chapel because there were some three kings who kind of fought and killed each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've tried to do my research and I have not found this story anywhere apart from Wikipedia.
No, no, no. It's not at all true. Yeah, my friend Ashley Rodriguez, he's from Consauli and he has a nice house over there as well. And he was also annoyed that everybody just comes and says, "Where's the ghost church?" And of course, it's not the ghost church at all. It's a beautiful,
Because
nice church at the top of the Quelim Hill, right? So you're going to keep your ghost stories very real, basically. That's what you're saying.
that's the goal. But then here and there, I mean, for one tour, you might hear a story where there are or two brothers who fought and
Yeah.
things like that. Something called local legends.
Yes.
Like if you go to Chandor and you ask the locals there, they would say that the village has been cursed and cursed by a queen from Kadambas. So now the story goes that there was an invasion on that village, and the locals did not support the king who then died, and the queen was away in her father's village. And when she came back, she saw all this destruction. So firstly, she kind of took out all the gold and threw it away in the fields of Chandor. So I mean, even if you go today, people say that you might find gold in field of Chandor.
Wow.
And secondly, she did something like she stomped a foot on a stone next to the river, and before jumping in the river, she put a curse on the village of Chandor. She said, Chandor गावचे पाठ जाव, हांगची बायला रांड जाव.
Yes.
So Rand is basically a
Yes.
widow, right? And so that curse, people believe, still stays, because if you see a lot of villagers, you'll find a lot of them have been widowed on a very early
Yes.
age. So true, no,
We
we
don't
don't
know.
know. But we share this as a local legend or a folklore, which is very interesting, because you cannot just share a story all the time. Sometimes the local legends are more interesting, but we share them as local legends. We tell that this is not something which we have, historically documented.
Yeah,
and
warning,
stuff.
it may or may not be true, basically. Yeah. Now, the other thing that's happening with Goa, which is very interesting, is that it's going beyond tourism. And there are a lot of creative people, whether it's writers, musicians, painters, all of these people who are now looking at shifting base to Goa. And I guess they are going to become what one now calls as a transplanted Goan, and there are many more of those rising. So what would you say to them? How can they maybe fall in love with Goa more? How can they, kind of become Goan? What would you say to them?
Okay, so I think a lot of this talk has been going on of
Yes.
Goikarpad and Goa, and,
Goikar.
Goikar, Bhaile,
Yes.
people
Yes.
from outside and
Yes.
stuff like that. So for me, anyone who loves Goa is a Goan. I mean, I don't differentiate between someone who's from Goa or someone who's from outside Goa. Anyone who loves Goa and wants to contribute is a Goan. And there are so many examples of people who have done brilliantly, and they're not from Goa, but they've moved to Goa and done it. And you can see it now that you have some people from different fields actually showing their talent in Goa. So you have those writers, you have the restaurants. I mean, you can see any kind of restaurant opening in Goa, and you have some of top chefs and bartenders in the world coming to Goa and setting up shop and, actually creating that kind of magic here. You have painters, you have writers, you name it and you have it. You have cricketers who have moved to Goa. So they will definitely enrich their surroundings. That's what I, anticipate. However, what I fear a little is, Goa has its own way of life. There are some traditions, some cultures, and whoever moves to Goa kind of needs to understand and learn them a little bit. Otherwise, they will be lost over a period of time. Even Konkani, for that matter. I mean, that language that we speak, otherwise it would be lost over a period of time because you don't have too many people in the world speaking. It's just a handful of Goans, 20 lakh, as you said.
Correct. Yeah, I guess more khotkote in someone's kitchen and more gozali on someone's balcony will help the Virat Kohlis of the world who are moving to Goa.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you need to understand that about the place and, keep it forward. When you move to Goa, you become a part of it and it kind of becomes your, if I may put it strongly, a duty to take it forward.
Great, Varun. Now we're coming to our next segment, which is, in continuation kind of with this, which is that I always ask my guests, that beyond what you're doing, you obviously have a love and a passion for Goa. So what according to you is your Susegad secret?
That's a tough one, I would say. So I don't know. So Goa is something that is the thing to change how you're feeling. Even if you're feeling down, if you're feeling out, you just go to a beach and there is something there. So it has the best elements of nature as well as and it can actually correct all your moods, I would say. So that's what Goa is for me. And, the secret, I would say, is it's just natural and existent here.
I think that's a very beautiful answer which you said. So I think that's right. I've said this before also. When you land in Goa, something changes. It's kind of magical, and let's hope that the magic remains. So yeah, I think you answered it beautifully. And now my next question, which is also another very important question which I asked, which has got nothing to do with Susegad, but it's got to do with love. Because I think that, a lot of people do things for love, whether it's in a relationship or whether it's, falling in love with Goa. So what is the meaning of love to you?
A sense of belonging, I would say. Something that you are very comfortable with. Something that you don't have to stretch too much to have. Something that is easy. And something that is, worth fighting over. That's what it would be for me.
Wow, great answer. Okay, great, Varun. Now we move on to our next segment, which is called the rapid fire segment, in which I ask you these really quick questions and you have like one-word answers. If you want, you can kind of just explain a little bit about it, but one-word answers would be great. Okay, so here goes. Your favorite beach and why?
Patne. I've been there recently. Amazing water close to the sea.
Your favorite Goan experience?
Favorite Goan experience? Going through the mangroves on a boat on an evening with some music and a drink, which we have actually curated recently, and I loved it. So yeah, that.
Which drink? Any particular one?
Now Urak, of course.
Yes, it's the season of Urak.
The season of Urak starting in. So yes.
Best Goan home architecture that you have seen?
Best Goan home architecture. So there is this place. It's a house in Ponda in Bandora, which is a combination of both the Hindu architecture as well as a European thing. So it's a Hindu home. A big home of the Javalgekar family, and it has a ballroom on top to entertain the European guests as well. So that was quite interesting for me. Apart from that, a lot of local homes with Rajangans is something I like. And something in the tribal zone as well. You have mud homes which are beautiful. So yes.
Wow, that is amazing. I'd love to see some of what you just mentioned. That's great. Okay, one historical fact about Goa that amazed you completely.
Okay, I'd like to state two here, if I may.
Go ahead.
One would be about your village of Kolvare, and the father of a legendary person, a person who's
Arya.
Like a legend in the world. Yes, his father comes from Kolvare. And this guy has done crazy things around the world with psychiatry. He's actually kind of theorized the modern day psychiatry. and he does not even get a mention of a footnote in a lot of
Historical.
literature. Yeah, he disproved the theories of Mesmer, and so this is one thing that I think someone who deserves more respect in Goa, India, and the world, and we should kind of claim him as our own because being from Korware and Khandelwal.
Yes, his mother. Yeah, his mother was from Khandelwal. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's quite an interesting connection there. But yeah, this is one gentleman who never ceases to amaze me. And secondly, how the conquest of Goa changed the story of the world in that sense, where you have the trade route between Asia and Europe being blocked, with the conquest of Constantinople. And then you just had a person who just traveled around and discovered the sea route to India and changed the whole history. I mean, imagine if it was not the case, the story of the world would have been very different. So Goa kind of becomes central, with the sea route and the conquest of Goa, of course, because then you had a base where they could do things from. Europeans can do things in India or Asia. Asians could then, transmit things to Europe, and people could understand different civilizations better. So, I mean, what a pivotal role that place has played in the history of the world. That is amazing, and people don't appreciate it enough. People see that, okay, that's just another place which is hyped, best for parties, best for bachelors, best for getting drunk and not remembering where you are. So there is more to Goa than that.
It's great that the Portuguese kind of stumbled upon it, and thank God there was no Google Maps.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. My next question is your best favoritist home cooked food.
So it's after maybe a dip in the sea or something, you just come back and have the fish curry rice, hot fish curry rice with ukde. Ukde is the
parboiled rice.
And
Goan rice with the husk on, basically.
Yes, exactly. And you have mackerel curry along with it, a little spicy, a little sour, and then you have good fish, like some 2 or 3 types of fresh fish being shallow fried, and maybe a parra or a fish pickle to go with it. Nothing like that, right? I mean, that is what I would love eating on a bad day or for the rest of my life.
Beautiful. This made me very hungry. So. Okay, great. So now the other thing that I want to ask you, and like you said, that Konkani is kind of, we need to keep it alive. We need to find ways to keep it alive. So I like to give our audience a phrase or a term so that maybe even they can learn the language a little bit. If not the language, then at least a phrase that they can use. So what's your Konkani phrase which you like, which you use, or which you grew up listening to? What does it mean? And give an example of it to us.
Okay, so I think I would borrow this from a very, very interesting gentleman, Sanjeev Sardesai. He said it in a context and it just stuck with me. And it's very true to Goa as well. So the phrase goes like, Handi rasa chedo, ani sotta sagro vado.
This boy is on your lap and you're looking for him everywhere.
Absolutely. So this means that there is something that you really need is right next to you and you're searching the whole world for it. And that is so true in context of Goa. I mean, people go around the world and people want to explore. People want to kind of, go to Gulf countries. People want to go to the US and do things and, create things. And you have such things happening in Goa. And I mean, when I went to the catacombs in Paris, right, you pay whatever amount for it, like 20 euros or more probably. Right. And then you go down and you see the skulls which are lying down, right? 6 million of them at one place. Amazing experience. But then people have marketed skulls as a tourist attraction and, bones. And Goa has so much more and so many interesting stuff that can be created. So we are looking elsewhere for something that is right in our backyard.
Yeah, very well put. And that's a lovely phrase. I hope some people, can, use it. Yeah, so that was a fascinating talk, Varun. And, I'm hoping to soon experience, one of your trails when I'm in Goa next. So that was wonderful and was great and very exciting talking to you. And it really was so visual, everything that you described. So thank you for being on the Susegad Stories podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was so great talking to you. Thank you, for this opportunity to share, talk about Goa and just kind of recollect, get refreshed and more motivated to do things. So thank you so much for having me, Clyde. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Varun, and Mogasoni.
Mogasoni, yes.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Susegad Stories from Goa. Do subscribe if you're a new listener and join a community of people who love and live the Goan lifestyle. Again, I'm Clyde D'Souza, and for more Goan content, you can follow me on Instagram at Clyde D'Souza Author. This podcast is brought to you by Bound, a company that helps you grow through stories. Follow them at Bound India on all social platforms for updates on this podcast, or take a look at their other podcasts. Moga Suni, and see you soon.